Hey there, welcome to NZ Money Karma, where you can find freedom from the daily grind through budgeting, simple living and adventure. It's wonderful to have you guys along today, and as you can see by the title, I'm doing something a bit different today because my subscribers or people that make comments have been asking for a while now if I could share how my family of four, how we paid off our mortgage early. And I would love for everyone to be able to pay off their mortgage early and to get free from the bank and free from debt. But I felt overwhelmed by the topic because it's such a big one, because we did a lot of things. It wasn't just one thing we did, it was a series of changes that we made to our lives that helped us pay off that mortgage early. So rather than sit here and talk for like 8 hours about how we've paid off our mortgage early, I'm going to break it up into different videos. And that way, A, I will actually do it, because the idea of just doing the big thing seems like too hard and it's putting me off doing it. And B, you'll get the information in bite-sized chunks. And then if you're seeing this all at a later date, you'll just be able to watch one video after another. This information could be used for any kind of debt, doesn't just have to be the mortgage. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by debt, or you're spending so much of your money each week putting it into someone else's pocket, this could be the video for you. So just to start and let you know that there is no easy way to do this. When you have hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, it is always going to weigh you down. It's always going to take a huge chunk of money out of your wage or your salary each week, and it's going to leave you with less money to do the really fun things in life that you want to do. But there's no easy way to get there. We didn't win lotto. No one gave us a gift of tons of money. We had to work our way out of this debt. And I'm guessing if you're here, you're in the same kind of situation. Now, to acknowledge a couple of things, if you're watching in New Zealand, well, you know what our house prices are like, so I don't need to explain that. If you're watching from overseas, the average house price in New Zealand at the moment is over $700,000. The average wage in New Zealand is under $100,000. So people generally have 8 to 12 times their annual wage in mortgage debt. So that is huge. So young people are getting mortgages. It's very much part of our psyche in New Zealand to want to get into our own home, and something I definitely hope for my children, and I hope it for you too. If you're in New Zealand and you're trying to work towards getting your own house, then this also could be for you, because you're going to learn some things to do along the way so that you can own that house lock, stock and barrel a lot earlier. So when I got my first mortgage, I was already married, so it was my husband and I. We both had a mortgage. We bought our first property at the age of 27, but it wasn't until I was 34 and a stay-at-home mum, we were living on one income, that we realised that this was actually a problem for us. So the very first thing we had to do in order to be able to pay off our mortgage early was to realise that there was a problem with having this massive debt hanging over our heads for 25 years, which was what our deal was with the bank. So how did I come to this realisation? Well, it was actually a friend. She rang me up. I just had my second baby and I was hanging at home, and she rang me up and she said, I just felt like I had to tell somebody we paid off our mortgage today. And I was like, what do you mean you paid off your mortgage today? She goes, well, we just paid it off early. And I was like, what? You can do that? I thought that when you signed on the dotted line with the bank and you said you would pay your mortgage over 25 years, I thought that was the deal. I know it's embarrassing to admit now, but I genuinely thought that we had signed up for 25 years and that was just our agreement with the bank. And it wasn't until my friend paid off her mortgage early that I realised this wasn't the case. So I was like, okay, my husband came home from work that day and I was like, guess what? Blah, blah, blah's just paid off their mortgage. So my husband came home from work that day and we basically started talking about how we could pay off our mortgage early. The other assumption I had always made about banks, so the first one is that I had to stick to my end of the bargain, which was pay off this loan over 25 years, never sooner. The second thing I thought the bank was there to do was to help us. I thought their very kind offers of assistance to loan us more money or to, increase our mortgage, I thought they were just really genuinely nice people who wanted to see my husband and I get ahead in life. And it wasn't until I started diving into the deep, dark world of personal finance that I realised, oh, hang on, the bank is a business and they're there to make money for the bank. So what they really want to do is see me in debt for 25 years. They do not want me to pay off that mortgage. That is not in their best interest. And once I realised that, I was like, crikey, I'm really on my own here. I have to figure this stuff out. So that's when we really kind of kicked into action. So from the time of having this brainwave that we're going to pay off our mortgage early to actually completing it, making our very last payment, was 7 years. So that was 7 years of quite consistently hard work. Now, you've stuck through my introduction, so that's a little bit of the background of how we got to this point. Now I'm going to start and I'm going to share my very first tip on how to pay off your mortgage early. And look, this is not going to be rocket science, people. So if you're after a quick fix, this is probably not the channel for you. I'm not going to tell you any lies. I'm just going to tell you exactly what we did. So this week's video is all about paying extra money on your mortgage. You really want to widen that gap between what you make and what you spend, and take the middle stuff and be able to put that on the mortgage. Like I said in the introduction, at this time I was a stay-at-home mum. I had a 2-year-old and a baby. I wasn't working. My husband was working in a very kind of average job. It wasn't well paid, but it was okay. We were just kind of scraping through. But it was certainly, money was pretty tight. It was the kind of tight that if I'd found $1 on the footpath, I would have felt really stoked and really happy with myself, you know, like we were managing, but we were managing just, you know, like every payday was like we were having to budget down to the very last dollar. So we realised 2 things. Well, if we need to widen that gap, we've got to decrease our expenses and increase our income. So decreasing expenses to me seems kind of like the easy win, because you review all your bills, we cancelled subscriptions, we stopped buying stuff. I wouldn't say we ever became minimalist, and we weren't huge spenders, but we did spend money, you know, like if I had wanted a thing or a piece of clothing, say, I would have bought it. I wouldn't have thought twice about it, and we weren't big on second-hand shopping at that stage, so it was all mostly new. Our hobbies were kind of expensive, so we cut down on those and looked for free things to replace them with. So I'm not going to go in hugely into how we decreased our expenses, because I think there's tons and tons of information on how to do that, and it's kind of the easy go-to. What I am going to focus on is how we increased our income, because that's not always easy to do, I don't think. And for us, it felt like the harder end of this, you know, widening the gap process. So we did it in a couple of different ways. First off, we got extra jobs. So like I said, I wasn't working at the time, and we have always committed to having one parent at home with our kids. So both going back to work full-time wasn't an option for us. So for me, I picked up casual shifts doing my old job. So I could work from 6 at night to 11, 5 hours. So my husband would get home by 5:30, then I would whiz out the door and I would go and work. So while I was still breastfeeding the baby, he would, you know, we would kind of arrange to meet, or I would pump or whatever. We just made it work. It wasn't every night, so it wasn't huge, and I had all day to kind of prepare and make sure we were ready for the changeover at 5:30. But it was a busy time, because by the time you get home from work, it's 11:30, maybe 12, unwind, have a cup of tea, that kind of thing. It's late, then 6 o'clock your kids are up again and ready to go. So I picked up a casual part-time job. So what we did for my husband was he saved up his holiday, so his annual leave, and then he would take a contract overseas. It's just in Australia, but when you take a contract overseas in our jobs, they fly you over there, and he would either do 6 weeks, which was what his annual leave was, or he would take leave without pay, because the pay in Australia was double what he was making in New Zealand. If he went and took an 8-week contract, he could go over there. We would, you know, live very, very frugally back here, so we could save as much of that Australian money as possible. He was earning double, so it didn't even matter really, even if we had to use some of that money for our living expenses, because he was still coming back with another chunk. And what we did with that chunk is we'd save it up, and every time we had $10,000, we'd flop it onto the mortgage. And we did that probably 2 times a year. for at least 4 years, I'd say, maybe even 5. He still does those contracts every now and then, but obviously we don't need the money for the mortgage now, and it's not quite, it's not so much a need. It doesn't feel like a need. It feels more like a nice extra to get some, like extra income. But that was it was hard work for us. But on the flip side, it worked really, really well. Without that, it was very difficult for us to come up with an idea of how can we get like a chunk of money to put on the mortgage. So that's what we did. I picked up casual work. Obviously, while he was away, I wasn't doing any of that. And then my husband saved up his holidays and then went and worked overseas. So that was the first thing we did to increase our income. We worked more. Well, the second thing we did to start increasing our income was we started a business. Now, I can't say where this idea came from, but we began flipping houses. I know, crazy, right? We don't come from a family who does this. We don't know anyone else who does it. But we've always liked houses. We like renovations. We don't do them ourselves. I'm not saying we are the renovators, but we've enjoyed the process of renovating things in the past. But we had never done, a big renovation. We'd never changed a kitchen out or a bathroom. We'd never even recarpeted a house. So we started this business, and it was really kind of a boom or bust thing. So I don't know if I recommend this to you, but I'm just saying what we did to get money to pay off our mortgage. So we started our house flipping business. It was GST registered. So if anyone wants to write a comment about did I pay tax, yes, I absolutely paid tax on the earnings of those house flips. To start off with, though, we were not in such a good financial position that the banks would lend us money. So we had to start off using a second tier lender. And a second tier lender is a little bit dicey, I think. They charge a lot more interest, and their terms are a lot, there's a lot more risk for the person lending the money when you go with a second tier lender. Our mortgages that they would give us were for a very short time, so we really had to turn the houses over quickly, and they definitely had to sell. So it was quite a stressful time for a while there, especially the very first house we did, because you think, oh my goodness, is this actually going to work? Have I bought the right house for the right money? Have I done a good enough renovation? Is someone going to come and buy it? And luckily for us, the very first house we did sold. Our plan was from the time we bought to the time we sold had to be 3 months. So 12 weeks from buying, through the renovation process, through the marketing process, through to someone buying the house. We set ourselves the goal of 12 weeks. At this stage, our kids were probably 1.5 and 3.5. We didn't live in the same place that we were doing these house flips, so it was an hour's drive each way, and I mostly did that. So my husband was like the supporting act, but I found the houses, I found the people to do the work, I managed the projects, I found the real estate agents, I negotiated, our sales and all those kind of things. So yeah, it was kind of crazy. It was a very, very crazy time, actually. In total, we bought, renovated and sold 13 houses in 2 years. So after the first couple of houses, we no longer needed a second tier lender. But instead of going to the bank to borrow money, we ended up doing something else, because we hate debt and we don't really like risk either, I have to admit. So we teamed up with another couple, and their thing was they had the money to buy houses, but they didn't have the skills, or indeed they thought not the time, to do the renovations or find the right house, that kind of thing. We teamed up with this other couple, and things kind of just carried on as they were. I carried on finding houses, organising the renovations, organising the sale, etc. We kept our same time frame, 12 weeks, but instead of us using any money or borrowing any money, the other couple funded it completely. So they took the mortgage, they paid for the renovations, and then when the house sold, we went halves. And it was kind of a casual arrangement. There was no paperwork involved in this for us. We just trusted each other. They trusted that I would carry on working as hard as I had done when they saw what we were doing for ourselves. And I trusted that at the end of it, they would, you know, transfer half the profits into my bank account. And it worked. You know, we never fell out. It kind of came to a natural end. After a couple of years, house prices just increased enough that it didn't seem to work for us anymore. We weren't able to buy at the low prices that we previously had. Even though we were still selling at what would be considered a low price now, the margin was good for us back then, and it started to not be as good. So we just went, okay, this was good. We're all ready to return to our normal lives, and we did. And I haven't done a house since. I do sometimes think about it now and think, oh, it's a good way to make money. But really, the best way to make money would have been if you could buy those houses and keep them. You know, we'd be gazillionaires by now. Every now and then I torture myself by having a look at a couple of the houses that we did early on and just seeing how much they have gone up in value. And the last time I did this, the first one that I looked at had gone up $650,000 and the second one had gone up $800,000. So whilst we took a profit from them at the time when we sold them, it was peanuts compared to these massive amounts of money. So, you know, if I was going to make a recommendation, it would be buy something and keep it. There's definitely more money in that. But this video is all about how we paid off the mortgage. And what we did is sell those houses, take our little chunk of money and pop it on our mortgage. And that's what we kept doing. So whether it was increasing our income through working more or starting a business, we took all that money and plonked it on the mortgage. So that is the first thing we did in order to pay off our mortgage. I hope you guys have enjoyed that. I hope it's given you some inspiration or some ideas for how you can start creating a little bit of extra money to pay off your debt, whether it be a mortgage or something else. Hopefully you can catch me next week where I'm going to talk about the second thing that we did in order to pay off our mortgage early. It's been lovely to hang out and I look forward to catching up with you guys soon. Bye for now.